You know, sometimes the most memorable moments begin in the simplest ways. A dinner table, a few familiar faces, and the quiet hum of a small-town evening. In a peaceful corner of Japan, a group of colleagues gathered after work. Among them were Hana and Nana, two friends who seemed inseparable. In the office, they were known for their teamwork. Outside of it, they were each other's sounding board for life's little victories and setbacks. When one of them had a bad day, the other knew exactly what tea to order or which bench in the park had the best view of cherry blossoms. That night, they laughed easily, swapping funny stories from work. Hana's boyfriend, David, had joined them too. He wasn't a colleague, but he'd met Nana several times before through Hana. The three of them shared the same easy rapport that comes from repeated encounters, the kind where no one feels out of place. But life, as it often does, had its own plans. A few days later, Hana received news she would need to travel for a week-long business trip. It wasn't her first time working away from home, but this trip came during a busy stretch, and she left in a bit of a rush, with quick goodbyes and promises to call. One evening while Hana was away, David took a walk through the quiet streets near his apartment. The night was cool, the air crisp with the scent of early autumn. He passed the small park where local children played during the day, now silent under the moonlight. And then, in a coincidence that only small towns seem to offer, he crossed paths with Nana. It started with a simple, "Oh, hi. What are you doing out here?" They chatted for a while, the way acquaintances do when they unexpectedly meet, catching up on work updates, laughing about something Hana had mentioned earlier that week. Over the next few days, they found themselves meeting again, not deliberately at first, but in those casual, easy ways life sometimes brings people together. They had quick dinners, watched a film or two, and shared conversations that drifted between lighthearted and thoughtful. But somewhere in the midst of these encounters, David began to notice something shifting inside him. It wasn't loud or obvious, just a quiet awareness that his thoughts lingered on these moments longer than they should. Here's the thing, feelings can be complicated. They don't always arrive with warning signs or clear instructions. Sometimes they start as nothing more than a warm familiarity, and before we realize it, they've begun to blur lines we once thought were solid. And that's where our story really begins, not in scandal or chaos, but in that delicate human space where emotions test our sense of responsibility, and where the choices we make next can shape the relationships we value most. As the days went by, David couldn't ignore the subtle change in the air. On the surface, nothing about his life had shifted. He still went to work, still called Hana to hear about her trip, still kept his daily routines. But underneath, there was a quiet unease. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was in the little things. The way he replayed a recent conversation in his head, the way he remembered Nana's laughter from a shared joke, the way he caught himself hesitating before sending a text. One evening, after work, Nana invited him to join her for dinner at a small cafe she liked. It was a cozy spot with steaming bowls of udon and the soft sound of rain tapping on the windows. They talked about their lives, work projects, family traditions, even dreams for the future. It all felt so normal, and yet, somewhere deep down, David recognized that this normalcy was the very thing that could quietly lead him astray. You see, emotions are rarely loud when they start to cross boundaries. They don't announce themselves with flashing lights. Instead, they show up in the comfort of a seat you didn't realize you were settling into. As they walked out of the cafe, David felt a mix of warmth and discomfort. Warmth from the company, discomfort from the growing awareness that he was standing at a crossroads. He knew that the choices he made now could affect not just his own peace of mind, but the trust and respect of people he cared about. That day, sitting alone in his apartment, David thought about Hana. He remembered the times she had stood by him. That thought was like a quiet lighthouse in the fog. It reminded him that relationships aren't just about feelings in the moment. They're about promises, about the steady care you give over time. The next day, David decided to create some distance. Conversations became shorter, plans less frequent. He wasn't trying to push Nana away entirely, but he knew he had to respect the boundaries that would keep his most important relationship safe. It wasn't an easy shift. Feelings, once stirred, don't disappear overnight. But David understood something vital. A momentary spark should never outweigh the steady flame that's been built over years of trust. In that quiet decision, he chose to value what truly mattered. And that choice would become a turning point, one that shaped how he saw himself and the kind of person he wanted to be. When we talk about the challenges in relationships, most people imagine big, unmistakable events, moments that arrive with a crash and leave no room for doubt. But in reality, some of the most important tests come quietly, hidden in everyday situations. David's experience was one of those quiet tests. It reminded him, and can remind all of us, that the strength of a relationship is not only measured by how we feel during the good times, but by how we act when those feelings are challenged. You see, emotions are natural. We can't always control the first thought that comes to mind, or the warm feeling that appears unexpectedly. But we can control the choices we make in response to them. That's where integrity lives, not in never facing temptation, but in deciding, each time, to choose what aligns with our values. David's bond with Hana was built on trust, respect, and shared history, like a garden cared for daily. Protecting it meant recognizing potential harm, even when it seemed harmless. His story highlights self-awareness. Stepping back allows wiser choices that honor loved ones. Boundaries are vital, preserving trust and preventing complications. David's decision wasn't about avoiding connection, but respecting unspoken agreements in meaningful relationships. True maturity lies in honoring these bonds. In the end, his quiet choice to protect their trust ensured that when Hana returned, their relationship remained just as strong, grounded in respect and mutual care. When Hana returned from her business trip, she found David waiting at the station, holding a small bouquet of flowers. The smile they shared in that moment felt different, not because something had changed between them, but because David had, in his own quiet way, reaffirmed what their relationship meant to him. They spent the evening catching up over dinner at their favorite spot. Hana told stories about her trip. David listened, laughing at her imitations of her colleagues, feeling grateful for the ease between them. What Hana didn't know, and didn't need to know, was that during her absence, David had faced a choice that could have shaped their future in a very different way. And in choosing to protect their bond, he had not only safeguarded their relationship, but also strengthened his own sense of integrity. Here's the thing. In life, we're all going to encounter moments that test our commitments to people, to values, and even to ourselves. Those moments aren't necessarily signs that something is wrong. Sometimes they're opportunities to prove to ourselves just how much we care. The world is full of unexpected meetings, new conversations, and fleeting connections. Many of them are harmless. But when they start to drift into territory that could hurt someone we value, it's our responsibility to pause, reflect, and choose the path that preserves trust. Trust is like a bridge, built plank by plank, strengthened over time, but vulnerable if neglected. Every decision we make either reinforces it or weakens it. The good news is, we have the power to strengthen that bridge every single day in ways both big and small. David's story is a reminder that doing the right thing doesn't always make for a headline. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's simply a private decision, one you carry quietly, knowing it reflects the kind of person you want to be. And in the long run, those private decisions shape our lives far more than fleeting moments ever could. So, whether it's with a friend, a partner, a family member, or even in your own personal goals, remember this: the real test isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about meeting them with clarity, self-awareness, and respect. When we do, we not only protect the relationships we value, but we also become someone worth trusting. And that's a reward that lasts a lifetime.